Hey, hello and welcome back to the Hornthrowers podcast. We are joined by Tom from Allfather. Really happy to have him on the show. Yeah, kind of like just kicking things off. If you wanted to, like, I remember reading like in the press packet that you're basically like you started the project over lockdown.
Oh no, they wrote the album over lockdown.
Oh right, okay, sorry,
Yeah.
my mistake.
But I liked the quote that it was born from desperation and forged in rage, and that rage and riffs were the only weapons you had to speak about how you were feeling. So how did that form about the project? Well, the album, and also what were the challenges and stuff writing over lockdown?
So we've been around since actually 2014/15. So we've been doing this a while now. And technically we wrote the majority of the album before lockdown. And then the end of it in the middle of lockdowns. With the biggest frustration being we kept getting to a point where we thought, right, we're getting somewhere now. Brilliant. We generally write demos on like individually, like our guitar player and bass player will write a few demos and put a few guitar things, but all our writing's done with the band being together. So we had, I think, 4 or 5 songs written pre-lockdown. Our new drummer had just started to help us write some of those, and then the first lockdown hit. We couldn't do anything for however many months it was. And then we got back in, had to re-practice and relearn all the songs that we had written. Started to get somewhere again. Great, another lockdown, and then we came back out of it, and we're in a bit of a rush to make sure that we had a set of songs that we could get recording, because it had been, what was that? That was last year before. It had been a few years since our last record. So the desperation was really in the recording of it. But the rage was generally built from the state of the world, I suppose, over the past 5 or 6 years, and how it seems to get progressively worse. And generally, our lyrical content has been mostly sort of politically based, and things don't seem to have got any better since the last record. So it was much more fuel to put into those lyrics moving for this time round.
Yeah, absolutely. The world is in a dire state right now, and that seems to be kind of like an ongoing topic with everyone we interview. And
Yeah, we were like, oh, because we really like RABM. We were like, we don't want to just be the RABM show. Every single, like, apart from we interviewed Melissa Moore from Sonia, that
Hellripper as well.
Oh, and Hellripper. Apart from those two, everything else has been very political.
What we do try and do though is ensure that the songs that we write, although are angry and generally heavy, and they have elements of, we try to build fun into them, in terms of how they sound. There'll be fast bits and slow bits and mosh bits and stuff like that. So we actually really enjoy playing our songs, and our shows generally are, I wouldn't say light-hearted, it's not a bowling for soup show, but we have fun on stage. We've tried in the past to be sort of slightly scary and intimidating, and because we generally have fun, we're a bunch of mates playing together, we generally have a bit of a laugh on stage, and the fun element generally comes with playing it and trying to put some fun bits and cool bits into our songs, so it's not just a dirge of hate and misery coming out. There is small elements of hope in those songs. There are elements where hopefully people can sing along, shout along, and scream along as well. So although lyrically it's a very dark record, I suppose musically, well, it's also should be hopefully in some ways fun to sort of interact with as well. If you come to a show of ours, there'll be plenty of opportunity to have a dance and bang your head and throw down in the pit and stuff like that. So that's what we try and do anyway, because we are aware that I'm not a big fan of just sort of misery music for the sake of misery music. There's got to be some fun to it. There's got to be some enjoyment of it. Otherwise, it just sort of grinds you down.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. We've listened to the record already, and yeah, it is very fun. There are definitely riffs in there.
Yeah, it's definitely, and there's bits that almost like sound like Behemoth in places and stuff like that, which is like, I don't know if that was intentional, but like I was kind of like kind of had like a Black and Death kind of sound to it.
Well, I think we're moving on from the last record, which was a bit more slower in parts, and we had a few sort of faster bits of songs. We changed our drummer a couple of times in between the last record and this one. We've stripped down to a 4-piece now rather than a 5-piece, and really that was because the sort of core of the band wanted to play some more extreme metal, wanted to put some more extreme elements of music in, like blast beats and deathier stuff, and incorporate black metal, but also try and continue to sound like Allfather and how we've done in the past. And it'll be up to everyone else whether they think that we've done that or not. But it feels like we're happy with what we've put out. But there was a definite intention to make it a more extreme record, and the record title comes from a number of things. We wanted to make more violent music. The lyrics, were associated with violence as well as sort of the artwork. So it all kind of fits in together, and part of that was wanting to incorporate elements of black metal and other sort of more extreme music genres that we've obviously enjoyed in the past. We're all, I think, of an age where we've got a lot of experience with music across. I've been listening to heavy music now for 35 years almost. Other members of the band have as well, and we like a huge range of heavy music and other alternative music as well. And really, it's just bringing all the stuff we love to listen to and love to and are fans of, and trying to incorporate it into what we do, as long as it works within the concept of the record we're making and what the band does. So that's what we did with this, and that's why there's sort of certainly blastier elements in some of our songs that we haven't had before in Allfather songs.
So, like, from the beginning, what was kind of like what was the concept for Allfather beginning with? Because you mentioned that you obviously like changed and evolved and tried to incorporate heavier music, but what sound were you kind of like trying to achieve in the earlier days?
So our approach had always been really just trying to write honest music that. So I think at the time, so 2014, 2015, sludgy hardcore, blackened hardcore was starting to emerge through like Southern Lord and Death Wish type labels. So bands like Black Breath and Burning Love and bands like that. And me and Andrew, our bass player, who sort of we're the founding members, as it were. Our kids went to the same school. We kind of met over Twitter, kind of realised our kids went to the same school, ended up hanging out for a bit. And he said, "Do you want to put a band together?" And I was like, "Sure." I've not done any music since I was in my early 20s, but sure, I can shout into a microphone if you want me to. And I think the idea was he had like a HM2 pedal and some stuff like that. And I think our first cover song that we just got together to see if it worked out was a Raging Speedhorde song. So the idea to begin with sort of like sludgy, hardcore type approach. But more importantly, we wanted to write really good songs. I remember having a conversation in the car with him and said, look, my favourite albums are those albums that don't just sound like one song 10 times. You can pinpoint the elements within the record that are your favourite, and each track is a standout within that record. And that's what I really want to try and do. I want to make sure that we're not just writing the same songs over and over and over again. Okay. So that was the idea. That was the idea to begin with.
No, I absolutely get that, and that's like an interesting point, because I do think a lot of bands have like an interesting idea to start with, but then it does just kind of feel like a long, drawn out version of the same song. Like a good example of that, and it's actually a band that I quite like, and it's probably controversial to say this, but like Slaughter the Soul by Out the Gates. Like Out the Gate, it's like so good, like but it does just peter out. I think
Yeah, I'm.
It's an album. It's like it doesn't have dynamics in it, you know.
I'm not brave enough to start slating at the gates at this point, but certainly there are the amount of times that someone recommends me a band, I stick on Bandcamp, press play, and I think, wow, this sounds incredible. The riffs are there, the sound is there. I love the vocals, and then I'm at the end of the record and I put it back on and I've listened to it 4 times and can't really pinpoint anything within the record that does anything other than just sound good. And lots of bands grow and develop and do that sort of thing, but that was really important to us, I think, in terms of what we wanted to try and do, which has led to us being quite heavy in terms of editing what we do. So we've probably, on this record, we had probably 4 or 5 other songs that we binned. Some of those were just in demo forms. One was pretty much completely written. One was 3/4 written, but we just felt like they didn't feel right, and they got dumped in the bin. So we're really sort of passionate about making sure that the songs we write are the songs we want to write. Every bit of that song is there for a purpose and is doing something. We all have to find it brilliant. We all have to find it awesome. And if anyone within the band is like, I'm not sure about this song, then there's a chance it might get binned off. We need to enjoy what we play. We need to be proud of what we do. So, people might think, well, the new record's a bit short. Yeah, it is, but we'd rather it be like full of absolute killer rather than have some filler in there that we're not happy with. So, and it is that really sort of idea around just writing as good a songs as we can is kind of what sits at the heart of the band.
Yeah, it's like a really valid point.
I was going to say, because obviously with it being, it's 29 minutes, isn't it? I was going to say that it does feel very concise. I know, because we watch a lot of banger TV, don't we? And Blaine always complains like, oh, this album is just like one song too long. I feel like with your new album, it's very to the point and concise,
and like leaves you wanting more, which is like, I think, ideally what you want from any kind of like art or entertainment, you know.
Yeah, I think probably all of us are slightly on the side of wanting records to be fairly short. With attention spans are not particularly long, I don't think, within the band. I like a good half-hour record, 40-minute record. I struggle with anything over that unless it is absolutely brilliant, or there's a real journey through that record that you can sort of go on and you feel like that time is needed. And again, feels like lots of bands release 10, 12 tracks and you're like thinking, well, we didn't need this one and we didn't need that one. So, I mean, I'd have loved to have been in a position where we had the ability to write 10 brilliant songs that we were really happy with, have the time to do that, have the budget and the studio facilities to be able to do that. And if the pandemic hadn't got in the way, then we may have been in that position. But that combination of just being really hard on the editing and having so much time out of not being able to do what we wanted to do, just meant that wasn't possible. There would probably been another 2 years wait for the record. So we made a decision, let's go in with those. It was 5 tracks at the time, so the instrumental track was an intro to one of the other songs, and through recording and the editing and mastering process, we actually moved that about because it felt better as a slight break in the intensity of the record. So it was going to be 5 tracks, same length, but we broke out that intro into a track all of its own. So yeah, as precise as we can make it, really.
So does the editing like translate into when you're actually recording as well? So are you guys like perfectionists when it comes to like, say, getting a guitar tone or like a snare drum sound?
So yes, to a point. Alan, who's our guitar player, who is what we sort of consider our musical director within the band, who takes charge of the recording process. He in particular is very perfectionist when it comes to guitars and guitar tones and exactly what he wants, and he needs to feel like this is the right take, and if it's not, it's not. And we had some issues with the recording of the guitars and the vocals initially with this record that meant we had to go back and do them. So the original guitars and vocals were done in a studio. We weren't happy with the output of that, so we went away, and me and Alan do a side project, a hardcore punk band, which is a studio band that we've been recording some vocals to over the last couple of years, and sort of learned how to record vocals in a pretty much a little hired sound room in London that Pirate Studios, they do like huge warehouses all broken up into different size studios. So basically hire a little room, he brings his laptop and his kit. I go into the little vocal booth, and we were doing vocals for the side project, and we felt confident enough that we'd learned enough of how to record vocals to redo the vocals for this record as well. And he pushes me quite a lot when it comes to getting the right vocal takes, and but when it comes to his guitars, he's very much a perfectionist. Luckily, our drummer, who's my little brother, is a very good drummer when it comes to hitting those marks. So he's like just always in time. There's rarely a bad take that he does. So we would be a perfectionist about that, but we don't really need to be, because he plays drums so well. And then the bass elements were from Andrew. We were lucky that we got a really good recording within the studio, so we didn't have to do too much with those. But yeah, variants of the recording go from very much perfectionist to it needs to be really good sort of thing. But there's no do takes, that's for sure.
So would there be consequences if you decided you wanted the St. Anger snare tone?
Yeah, so basically you decide how it sounds, but we trust him to know that he won't want the St. Anger snare sound as well. So although saying that, our guy's snare is a particularly loud, aggressive, snapping snare that we did have to tone down a little bit in recording, because it is so, he usually does a thing when we're playing live and when we set up and no one's really paying attention and he's ready to go, he'll smack a snare drum that makes all the band jump, and often the sound man and half the audience as well. So it is that, but it doesn't sound like St. Anger, but it is like a pretty piercing snare sound that he has.
Wolf and a biscuit tin.
Yeah. So you're talking about your vocal takes. I know you put a big thread up the other day about how your approach to vocals, like on Twitter. Do you want to sort of talk through that?
Yeah, we just had a practice, and over the 5 songs, the 5 full songs with vocals on the record, we've been playing 4 of them for the last couple of years. But the 5th one, Cast Off the Cross, we played for the first time live on Sunday. That's the first time since we pretty much recorded it. And probably the last time we played it as a band was 2 years ago. And it just struck me that the vocal, I've sort of got 3 vocal things that I do that go from sort of death metal, growly, hardcore shouty, and screamy. And I do that on all our records in various ways, and try and add character and things like that. But I do nothing necessarily different on that 5th track, Cast Off the Cross. But I really struggled with it, and I was properly warmed up, and it just struck me how interesting it was that the reason I find my vocals, at least when playing live and practicing, easy, is because really some sort of muscle memory that I have of the songs that we've played loads before. And my voice knows what it's about to do. I know where I'm supposed to breathe and all that sort of stuff, and I can do it. Whereas it just struck me how difficult I found doing it for the first time on Friday. On Sunday. But we've got a few more practices before we've got to play it live, so that's fine. I can build that in. But I think then I was talking about actually live and practicing. I'm really confident with my voice, and I feel I can do quite a lot with it. But I really struggle when it comes to recording, because I think the environment is so different from, you're standing in a room with a whole band around you, it's really loud, and you're sort of riding the music, and your voice is coming through the PA, and you're using the PA to literally amplify what you're doing. And when you're in a vocal booth all by yourself with just your headphones, I find it quite difficult to not just hear what's coming out my mouth, and that sounds weird versus what I can hear when I'm playing live. And I've had a real problem with that, with the confidence levels of being able to deliver that. And that's again got better and better as me and Al have worked together on recording some other vocals as well for our side project. The point now where I'm really excited about hopefully at some point getting back into the studio to do more Allfather vocals from a recording point of view, because it feels like my confidence levels in recording is much higher than it was when we recorded the Allfather vocals. And I think it's just interesting how, you know, I speak to various people in bands, and how some people love playing live, some people love practicing, some people love recording, and it's all just, you know, it differs from person to person. But I'm most comfortable in the practice room, surrounded by the lads, playing the music as loud as we can, and it feels like I can do what I want when we're doing that. And it's just transferring that to recording has been difficult, but I feel like I'm in a really good place now to do it.
Well, that's like absolutely the case. Like we attempted to start a band and stuff, and it's very, like, we had like a song that we wrote that sounded like really, really good, and then attempted to record it at our other guitarist's house, and my voice would just not perform, whereas it sounded okay in the practice room. Like, it was very bizarre. Like, so I don't think you're alone with that phenomenon, and I think it is kind of possibly like a psychological thing as well.
Well, I've noticed we do a cover of what song is it?
Which one?
Countess Battery.
Yeah, by Venom.
By Venom, and you can do that really well when you're not thinking about it, and then when you think about it, you sort of get
and my voice like fries, and I'm like, oh, but yeah.
And then you realise what you're doing on guitar, and you'll be like, oh, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, but whereas if I just get into like a groove with it, or like, you know, almost do it as an unconscious thing, we can do like a whole run through of that song, like, I don't want to say flawlessly and big myself up, but without any glaring taste.
Yeah.
Like,
it's 100% for me psychological, which is frustrating because I know there's not a physical reason I can't do it. It's just my body reacting to my confidence levels, and how and I can't. It's trying to find ways through that, and really is that finding ways to just be more confident what you're doing. So what helps for me is having the music as loud as I can in my ears, which pisses Al off because he can hear the bleed through from the headphones to the microphone, and also having, like, not for a recording purpose, but for what's in my ears, having quite a few effects on my voice. So some like quite heavy reverb and things like that. So again, I can concentrate on using it in a way that drives, like, without hearing. It's hard to explain, but the effects on it from a point of view of what I'm hearing makes it easier to deliver, and therefore builds my confidence. That's not necessarily what's recorded, but that's what I hear in my ears, and then I feel better about what I'm doing, and then can push it further and further and further as a result of that.
Like, reverb really helps, like with that, like, kind of sustain and kind of like giving like more of like a body to your voice and stuff like that. So if you're hearing that back, I can get why that would be, you know, you're like, you know, I'm okay, I'm actually sounding pretty good here, like maybe I can try and put like a bit more breath into this or something, you know, like.
Yeah, and I could never sit at home and record just into a laptop. I generally try and warm up first. Got my booth ready. I've got my microphone and my stand. I sort of warm up, and it's a whole thing. Whereas I know people that record at home straight into a laptop and produce some great stuff, and I couldn't do that. I need a bit more than that to sort of get my voice in that place where I can record a decent vocal.
No, absolutely, that makes total sense.
So lyrically, what sort of things do you draw on? I know it's said about the state of the world, but what sort of things in particular? Is there anything like a specific, or is it just sort of the sense of injustice and like inequality? Or
So generally, each song has a specific meaning behind it and a specific set of lyrics that are trying to get something over. So from the new records, so Poison Soil, for example, is a sort of, always loath to say anti-capitalist when you're sitting here with a pair of decent headphones on, and but we can't avoid living in a sort of capitalist world at the moment. But it's very clear what the evils of that are, and how, in essence, that's driving the destruction of everything around us and impacting people's lives. And not only is that the case, that people are benefiting from that, and people are putting themselves in a better position by harming everyone else. So really, Poison Soil is about that. Take Their Eyes started off with me reading an article, I think it was in the Irish Times, about how at the time we were seeing in Trump's America the sort of testing of moral boundaries when it came to how people were being treated, in particular refugees and immigrants coming into America. And the point of the article was about how people's morals were being tested, like to see how far fascism could go, or the ideas of fascism could go, without really being fought back on. And that's just been built on over the years since that. So that was early Trump times, on what we're 5-6 years later now. And only this week we've seen, or last week, the new bill being put through the Parliament about how to treat refugees coming into this country, which is beyond deplorable. So those things have been tested. Right-wing governments have found out they can get away with those things, and are starting to put them into practice. And quite frankly, left-wing parties within this country and in the States as well are pretty much in agreement with those stances. Their point is, those you're not going to actually deliver them well. You're not going to be able to run those policies very well, and we can do it better. So that's all really disappointing. So that's how that started, that song anyway. And that's really what the first part of it is about. And then the second part of it is around how those on the right, but also often in the centre, and to some extent the sort of centre left, view violence when those people that are in those communities that are generally oppressed by right wings react violently, and how it is always sort of condemned. And people are supposed to take a higher stance on it and take a moral high ground, when year after year, time after time, those communities and those people are being beaten into the ground through both political violence and real violence, and somehow they're not supposed to respond to that. And I think
sorry.
No, so, what I was going to say is, I'm generally not one of those people that's affected by those sorts of things, those sorts of policies. I am a cis heterosexual white man in his 40s. So those, and advocating for violence against the state often feels uncomfortable. But at the same time, how can you expect people that are victims of that violence, whether that's political violence or real violence, to simply sit there and take it? And I don't think that's fair. And that's kind of what the second part of the song is about: people's right to have to defend themselves if they're given no other choice to do that. And those that are never in that position or are never threatened in that way should really think to themselves whether condemning it is the right thing to do. The answer is no, it's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is try and find ways to stop that violence happening against those communities and those people. So that's what that song's about. So each one is about something, and we try and wrap those lyrics up in a way that's both not too metaphorical, so it's not completely removed from the subject matter, but at the same time we use the tropes of heavy metal and hardcore in terms of how those lyrics come together to to get those points across.
Yeah, like a lot of bands tend to do that. Like, you know, they'll mythologize that kind of like struggle against oppression by whether it be like in a fantasy setting or something like that with the lyrics, you know.
Yeah, I think sometimes though, if you need like essays and to dive in with the magnifying glass on to figure out what's going on in a song, I think sometimes maybe it's not really achieved what it wanted to. So I think being more direct is probably the best way to go. And I sort of, when you were saying that, sort of reminded me of, it's strange how like when like policies like as like political violence policy wise seems to be as if like there's no consequences for it. It's like the Tories can like destroy the NHS for ages and people could die as a result of that.
That's always
But
the way.
there would be no recompense for the there would be no like.
That's always the way that things are reported on, though. They never show the first blow that was struck. It's always it's usually the wronged party when they lash out back that tend to be condemned and sort of like, you know, like reviled for what they're doing.
Yeah, it's like there's no
like
people act as if like the consequences of policy and policy itself are devoid, and that like people aren't bad people for voting for bad things, which I always find really strange.
Yeah, well, and seemingly people aren't bad people for putting policies in place and voting for policies that create harm and create death. Look at what the Tory party have done over the past 12 years, you know, and even Labour are reluctant these days to really call any of that out in a meaningful way. It's seemingly saying that, you know, just because you make a decision that you're empowered to make within Parliament, and that decision not only may harm people but actually benefit you at the same time. It's like a, you know, double whammy. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with that. Look at Hancock and what he's gone on to do. His policies and the way he worked during the pandemic seemingly led to increased deaths. He also benefited from giving his mates loads of money, and now he's on TV all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, what have you got to do? You know, Boris Johnson said, "Let the bodies," whatever he said, "let the bodies pile high in the corridors. There'll be no other lockdown." I don't think anyone disbelieved he said that. So he was fine for a while, you know.
I remember reading like prior to the pandemic, and it's kind of like important that this was before there was like a pandemic and stuff like that. That there's an estimated 130,000 people had died as a result of austerity and being denied vital services, healthcare, even just like, you know, kind of like more like social services that might have actually meant the difference between life and death, between people in their struggle and mental health, things like that. And it's kind of like that consequence of policy that you were talking about before, that people don't rationalize that. And I've brought that up to people and they've just laughed. And it's just kind of like, no, this is genuinely like, you know, I don't know, it's horrifying that there is that separation.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of our first songs was called Post Austerity Blues, which was about exactly that, the fact that these things were a political decision to make, and as time's gone on, it's become more and more clear those were political decisions, and were the beginning of, you know, tearing some of this country apart, quite frankly. And the people that make those decisions never suffer from the consequences of those policies. So yeah, our songs are about something most of the time. is the short answer to that question.
I feel we're somewhat in agreement.
I feel like we need to get into a lighter territory. We've noticed. So I've never used Twitter because I always was like, oh, it seems very toxic.
Yeah, it does seem like.
And when we were trying to promote Hornthrowers, we made Twitter. We find it very hard to like not jump into things because I'm like a trans femme person, so I see all these things and I'm like, I want to tell this person to fuck off, but no, it's a professional page.
I think you probably get more eyes on you from the type of audience you want to cultivate if you did do that.
But then I don't know about that because of we also are associated with the radio station.
Community radio.
Community radio station isn't supposed to be political, but we play Nazi Die by Doom. on that, and we've been encouraged to do so. So I don't know, but we have noticed that you like Warhammer, and
Oh God, I am my abode is piled high with plastic crap.
yeah, that's it's
Yeah.
not hard to get here, but we got to the Warhammer.
Oh yeah, I'm excited.
I thought you were going to ask me about. I thought you were going to ask me about Twitter, but if you're asking about Warhammer, that's even better. So,
getting the ball rolling. Primarily, what's the army that you play at the minute?
so at the minute, I have a 2,500 point orc army. So I'm 45 years old this year, and I think I've collected my first set of Warhammer stuff, first edition Rogue Trader, when I was about 12 or 13. So, however, in between that first purchase and when I started playing again at the beginning of, or at this time last year, there's been many gaps, many years worth of gaps in between that. So we've got, so me and my son now play. He plays Dark Angels and Tyranids, and is collecting a Death Guard army as well. But we've got stuff from first edition, third edition, fifth edition, and a load of new stuff as well around the house. I've got a whole box of first edition orcs. I've got some stuff that I don't even know what it is because it's all early Rogue Trader stuff. And the big problem for me was I could never paint. I was awful at painting, like useless. And at the beginning of last year, my son said, I want to get him back into Warhammer. I want to try painting again. And he had a really good go at it. And I was like, okay, I suppose I better try now. And through YouTube, I learned how to paint much better. I'm not good at painting, but much better than I had been before. And now for the last year, I've just been collecting a whole new set of orky stuff. I've got a couple of custodes that I'm starting to work on. We've got a whole load of, next to me here is a whole load of old stuff we've got guard, we've got chaos. There's a hell drake sitting there. So yeah, full back into the plastic addiction, unfortunately.
Is it the new guard stuff by any chance?
So there's some old guard stuff, but I bought the kill team starter box. So I've got a little guard kill team upstairs that I want to put together. But generally I like collecting big stuff that's easier to paint, and I don't have to paint human faces. Yeah. So as simple as possible. But the guard stuff looks really nice, and on my ever growing list of stuff one day I'd like to buy, that certainly sits on there. But yeah, I'm back in the nerddom of Warhammer.
Yeah, I've actually got sent but totally by accident due to a clerical error from Games Workshop's, got sent like £140 worth of guard stuff recently.
Oh, nice.
So I cancelled the order because I managed to find that the Cadia Stands box set elsewhere for cheaper, whilst Games Workshop were all the stock issues, and then they just sent me the component pieces for it anyway, because like, even though they already refunded me. So I'm just sitting on like a massive unbuilt guard army right now that I need to.
That sounds great. I want to try and start to build a small custodes army, mainly because I won't need to buy a lot of figures, and with orcs you have to buy tons and tons and tons of them. So,
but orcs have like the best lore in the entirety of the game, though, as well. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Do you know much about?
Yeah, no, I do know about the sentient.
Yeah, they're basically sentient mushrooms, and like anything they believe is true becomes true, and it's just so silly.
the lore has changed over the years, but that's it sits in a pretty good place at the moment. And what my favourite bit of the hobby is like kit bashing stuff and conversions, which is what orcs are absolutely perfect for. So if I, that's my favourite part, is making new stuff that is playable and sits within what we do. So yeah, I'm certainly back into it. I actually went up to Colchester to see my son on Saturday. I thought I'd booked a table at a place where we could have a game. I'd booked the wrong day, and there was a massive tournament going on there, so we didn't get to play. So hopefully I'll get to pop up there in the next couple of weeks and we'll have another game.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Like,
I just got a whole load of unbuilt sisters because I got into it. I built quite a lot. I haven't painted them yet. Well, I've undercoated one set. I've got like the big box set with like what they called like the Tennyson engines. Got one guy of those with like the tanks and everything in a massive box set I've built. I've got two of the other Tennyson engine things, a whole other team, and now I've got like the Lord of the Rings Warhammer that I haven't painted. I was like, what did I get first? I got a Nazgul, didn't I? I got the Witch King.
I feel like I'm responsible for a lot of this.
Yeah, I got the Witch King. I saw the Witch King on Instagram and I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. And you bought me it for Christmas.
Yeah.
And then now I was like, oh, I'm going to have to buy this. It's like Wormtongue and like Saruman and the Palantir. I was like, okay.
And then split the big starter box.
Yeah, we split the big starter box. And now then I saw like Gandalf and Pippin and Merry. Was it both Merry and Pippin? I can't remember.
It was Gandalf. It's just Pippin. He's got him on the horse.
Oh yeah,
like he's like
and I just bought that and I haven't got anything yet, and I don't have time at the moment.
Yeah. Well, me and my daughter have just over Christmas. She watched for the first time, me for about the 10th time, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and we're just going back now to rewatch the director's cuts. So there may be a point in the future where she starts to go, you know, that Warhammer stuff you do, they do Lord of the Rings, but at the moment, focused on 40k, and I've got a pile of shame that's far too big at the moment anyway. So I think I'll stick with that for the time being.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just out of interest, like obviously with the name Allfather and stuff, like has associations with like Norse mythology and early medieval history and stuff. How much of that is an inspiration to either themes of like imagery or lyrics, like, or is it just a cool name?
It started just as a cool name, and I think we probably the idea was around not the only part of sort of the mythology was really looking at the fact that Allfather refers to Odin, who is the god of knowledge, and it was really sort of building on that aspect of it. And then sort of, I think our first drummer quite liked a load of Norse stuff, and our very first T-shirt was a bit Viking-y. That was a sort of slightly misunderstanding between us and him about what we wanted on the first shirt, but really that's all it is. And I've got a beard. We've all got beards, but I've got a big beard, and I think, but that's about it. That element of that's what the name relates to doesn't really apply to what we do anymore, and it didn't really apply in the first case. Like I said, we've never written a Viking song, and there are plenty of other bands that do that and have that shtick, and that wasn't what we were there for. So it was a cool name that had some meaning to it, and there's only one other band that was called that at the time, and they were defunct for 4 years, and the plan wasn't to be 10 years later still writing music. Really, it was just let's have a go at being a band. So that's kind of where the name come from, and it stuck. So yeah, beards, and hopefully you can learn some stuff from our songs and what we write, but that's about it. That's the only link.
Did I see that you tweeted that you thought you'd found another band called Allfather, but it was just your account with a different profile picture?
So our Bandcamp avatar, whatever it is, the little thing that pops up, has been for the past 5 years our old record artwork, and I thought, oh shit, I better change that. So I changed it to a photo of us playing live. 5 minutes later, did a search because I needed to find the link to our merchandise, and thought, oh shit, there's another Allfather. Now there is another Allfather there's a sort of a dance DJ that calls himself Allfather that we had some problems with for a year or so on our Spotify, when Spotify would often put 2 names together of the same band. So I was a bit worried, like, oh god, this is happening again. But no, just the fact that I forgot that I changed the Avi on our Bandcamp account.
But I mean, we kind of had that for a brief period, like, because the not that we've like recorded anything or played live yet or anything, but, like the band name we settled on was Horaith, which is like a Welsh word, and there was like a pop group on Spotify that released a single 4 years ago that had like 1,000 listens, and I was like, yeah, I think we're safe to use it.
Yeah, someone did contact me once and say, I'm starting a band. Can I noticed you've got a clothing line called Allfather. I'm wondering if it's okay if we use that name as well. And I said, I mean, we've got great merch, mate, but we're actually a band as well. We got 3 albums out, and probably look for a different name. And I didn't hear from them again. I don't think they used it, but we've been all right with that so far.
Sweet. Well, we'll circle back around to Twitter. How do you guys navigate Twitter when it is so toxic?
Well, it's me that navigates it mostly. I don't think any of the bands now are left on Twitter. And how do I navigate it? I suppose I think what helps is I'm not great at arguing online, so I don't generally look to find beef and get into it. I don't follow anything that I don't really want to see. And when I need a break from it, I simply have a break from it. But of course, going back to one of my earlier points, the sorts of toxicity that comes out through Twitter isn't ever really directed at me or what I do or who I am or how I live or who I love. So I can understand how it is much more difficult for other people when that is the case. I've generally found Twitter to be a positive. Yeah, no, let's go with it. Positive. It's been positive for me in a number of ways. In terms of the band wouldn't be the band without Twitter, quite frankly. And through Twitter, I've made loads of connections with people that I simply wouldn't have made those connections with. And it gives me an opportunity to listen to voices from people that I wouldn't hear down the pub, or I wouldn't hear in my social circles or in my work circles, which has kind of opened my mind to how other people live and those sorts of things. So for me, it's been kind of the opposite, but there are a number of reasons for that are quite clear. Is that I avoid getting into like beefs unless I really have to. I will just block someone or I'll just mute someone. In most cases, most of the time people aren't throwing the hate at me, so it is a bit easier to be on to be on Twitter as a result, and can understand why people find it much more difficult.
I'm always tempted to make my own personal account just to dunk on people, because for some reason, like TV news keep appearing in our like the feed thing at the front. Like, because I've never used it, I don't really know properly how it works.
Explicitly left wing as well.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then there's just like some GB news crap before, and I was just like, I was going to comment on it. I was like, no, it's the Hornthrowers page. It needs to be sacred.
Yeah. So I've got whatever the algorithm does. I've built my page over many years that generally doesn't show me stuff that I generally don't want to see, and that's not the case for new accounts, I know. But also I try really hard not to like retweet in any sort of way or give platform to harmful voices, even if it's dunking on people. It that if what they're saying doesn't impact me, I don't kind of have the right to amplify that voice, even if I'm trying to do something positive. So I generally don't do that. Don't do that either, because it's not really my place to. But I sometimes feel guilty about sort of not saying the things I feel like I should be saying about some stuff sometimes as well. But trying to make that balance between letting the people that are harmed by this stuff say what they need to say, and me keeping quiet and where possible amplifying those voices rather than amplifying harmful voices in a way of just trying to say, oh look at me, saying that's terrible, aren't I great? Which is, I don't think in this day and age particularly useful, or the pros of it are outweighed by the cons of it.
We're just distracted because he's got some Dagoos called Fenris and Ted. We've let one out because he was banging the bars, and I thought he had something in his mouth then, but you said it's a cookie.
Oh no, he's like
he's allowed to
he's
eat,
full
so-
on. He's full on like made a beeline for his treats and stuff.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's like it's fine.
He's crashed every single podcast that we've done in your place. And he's just got a cookie in his mouth now. I thought it might have been something he shouldn't have been
No,
eating.
it's one of those hay cookies. He's
Okay.
fine with it. But yeah, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
I think that's thrown me completely off what I was gonna say.
Well, we could, if you would like, we could go to the picks and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, so yeah, we asked you to pick 5 songs which are not labeled explicit because Hell Ripper suggested a Toxic Holocaust song, which was labeled explicit. So I picked one that wasn't. It had a load of F-bombs in the chorus, and we played it live. So we try and be more
Well,
careful.
I almost did that with the mortality rate song because I checked and You Are the Gasoline was not marked as explicit, and I thought I'm pretty sure there's an F-bomb in that, so I double checked the lyrics and there was. So I chose one of the other mortality rate songs that was also not marked as explicit. I checked the lyrics for you as well, and it's also not explicit.
Thank you. So what were your picks, just so we can talk through them, and how they?
So so first of all, there was Power Trip, and If Not Us, then so probably pre-pandemic, leading up to us preparing to start writing the record, is when Power Trip really blew up, and we share within the band sort of overlaps of the music that we love, but rarely do any of us, all 4 of us, absolutely love one band. But Power Trip were that band at the time that, for a number of different reasons, and we all just completely fell for. And myself, Guy, my brother, and our drummer, and Al saw them loads of times as well playing. And then it was real heartbreaking to with what happened with the singer, and we just really loved that album, and it sort of captured everything we loved about I loved about heavy metal. So we picked that. Gatecreeper and Flamethrower. We talked about guitar tones earlier, and the guitar tone from that Gatecreeper album, and more importantly, when me and Al went to see them play live at the Black Heart, again pre-pandemic, it was the best guitar tone we ever heard live, and that was a massive influence in terms of the sort of sounds Al wanted to capture, and the way some of those riffs are put together. Certainly influenced a couple of the songs on the new record, particularly the end of The Hunt Infernal was really heavily influenced by that sort of slower stomping death metal. Black Sabbath, pretty cliched in terms of heavy metal, but when I asked the rest of the band what songs they wanted, very quickly it somehow descended into a what's your favorite Ludacris song? I don't know how that happened, and I didn't get a lot out of them. But the one thing I did get out of Andrew was, when it comes to writing demos and song structure, that he's massively influenced by the song Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath. The fourth one, hardcore band, I think from Canada, called Mortality Rate. They've just had a little 2-song EP come out last year. Re-released an album. This comes from their second EP. The song's Roses. The vocal delivery of their vocalist is, for me, absolutely incredible on that song in particular, but the last 2 songs in particular, their song Rosemary, which is also the vocalist for World of Pleasure, who are like a hardcore straight edge band. It's just some of the most vicious vocals I've ever heard, in terms of absolutely unhinged hardcore delivery, yet still maintaining the delivery. You can understand what she's saying, you can understand what she's singing at the same time. And then finally, I chose a Gallows song, and I can't remember which one, but certainly when I was looking to start writing the lyrics, and we were talking about what we wanted the punkier elements of the band to sound like, Great Britain was a massive influence, and I was listening to that a lot. And me and Al went to see them play at House of Vans again just before the pandemic. And again, there was we were into a big gallows worship just as we went into to write the record. So I think that's the 5 tracks I chose. So they all have a connection to what we do and why we do it and how we do it. And they're all cracking songs as well.
No, they slap.
Yeah, as I said, yeah, they were solid takes.
Yeah, we saw Gate Creeper a couple of months back, and they were just.
I think it was about 6-7 months ago now.
Okay,
was that in the summer?
Yeah, it was in the Rebellion in Manchester.
Celestial Sanctuary on support.
Yeah, and Cryptic Shift.
We saw we saw the same tour at the Underworld.
Yeah.
And I think it was the week after Outbreak Fest as well. And we were very lucky that at Outbreak Fest we met one of our friends, Chris, who runs the Devonshire Arms in Camden, just up the road from the Underworld. And we mentioned that we wanted to try and go, and he said, "I'll get you in. I'll get you tickets." So we met up with him and had a really good night with him. Saw Celestial Sanctuary, saw Gate Creeper, had a lot of drinks, and it was a really, really fantastic night, really good night. And they were really great, really, really brilliant.
Like, a mate of mine from my historical reenactment group came along with us, and he doesn't tend to go to a lot of gigs, and pretty much got the shirt torn off his back.
Oh yeah, he was like, "Oh, this is my Trivium shirt that I got when I saw Trivium, my first ever gig," and it's ripped now.
Oh yeah, it's like to the back, torn off in the pit, and it was like we felt. Yeah.
I went to Celestial Sanctuary, and like I saw them again with Undeath a few months ago. Oh yeah, it was Iron Tomb, Celestial Sanctuary, and Undeath, and that show was really, really good as well. And I went up to the vocalist, like guitarist, afterwards when I bought merch. And was like, "I really like your Bolt Thrower hoodie. I can't get any anymore." And he told me where he got it from. I won't say where he got it from.
It's the same place everyone gets Bolt Thrower merch from these days.
Yeah.
Like, it's the real stuff. The real stuff is like hen's teeth.
Yeah.
Well, there's 3 ways to get Bolt Thrower stuff in there. The old stuff from Earache, from Bulgaria / Romania on bootleg, and eBay that's the old proper real stuff. And when it's just simply not available in that way, and if it's a good bootleg, I think sometimes it's worth buying a decent bootleg.
I had the chance to see Bolt Thrower like in 2010, and I was like, "Oh, I've not really listened to them much now. It's fine. And I didn't realize how rare a gig it was, and stuff like that. And then like a week or 2 later, had listened to them more and was like, "These guys are amazing." Never got to see them live, and my friend still has like they were doing like a reprint like Realms of Chaos hoodie that had like the sort of like 8-pointed star on it and like the symbol of corn on the back of it and all this at 40k stuff on. And I'm so jealous of that hoodie.
Yeah, I can't claim any cool points here. I only really got into Bolt Thrower after they split up, and I never got to see them either. So, yeah, I'm in the same boat really. I probably had a number of opportunities to see them, but was never really into them until they broke up, unfortunately.
Yeah, but yeah,
I think I was a young teenager when they played in Wrexham, though. That gig you're on about.
Oh no, I was a young teenager at the time that was just hanging out with metalheads that were a lot older than me and were a really bad influence and getting me drunk all the time.
I might have been about 12 or 13.
You would have been 14 because I think I was 16 at the time.
Yeah, there we go.
So, yeah. But yeah. Finally, is there anything? Obviously, I'm assuming the new album is one of those things, but is there anything you'd like to promote and we can kind of like give a platform to here, like to get people to check out any tours, anything?
Tours, God, we love a tour. We've got we don't play many, we don't get offered many shows, so it's a constant bugbear of ours. But we're playing the Devonshire Arms on the 1st of April in Camden as our record release show. Well, we're going to play the whole of the record and a few other bits and pieces We're supported by Carob and Row of Ashes. It's free entry, so if you're in London South East, come along to that. Our shows at the Dev are always brilliant. I can't wait for that. And then we're trying to sort out a couple of local Kent shows as well. And who knows, one day a promoter might respond to us when we ask him if we can support a band, but we'll see what happens. But thanks so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed having a chat with you.
Absolutely. I think hopefully, like after hearing the new album and how good it is, I think that's definitely going to go a long ways to hopefully getting you some more shows and stuff. Like,
don't people keep telling us, and we'll believe it when it happens. But thanks for that. I really appreciate it.
No, that's. When did you say the album release party or show was?
The record comes out on the 31st of March, and the show is on the 1st of April, the next day.
I'm in London at the beginning of May for Incineration Festival, so I thought if they lined up, I might try to go, but no.
One day we'll. Well, if you start to put shows on in North Wales at some point, then hit us up because we may well come up.
Right, we will remember that, and hopefully, like if we can get the capital for like the upfront costs of like the shows and stuff like that, that's the end goal of what we're doing with the radio and the podcasts and everything, and definitely we'd love to put you on.
Because Wrexham used to have good gigs. It used to have like Carcass have played here, Napalm Death,
Bolt Thrower, Death, like as in Chuck Schuldiner.
I said Death, yeah.
I thought you said Napalm Death.
I said Napalm Death, Death.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I thought you had a stutter.
No.
But yeah, it's actually insane. Like a guy when we first started the show sent a load of like all these digitized like old flyers from back in the 90s, and like pretty much all of those like American death metal bands that we all worship, and all of the kind of like Peaceville era, black metal, grindcore stuff like that. They'd all played Our Little Town and stuff like that. There's no reason it can't happen again.
No.
Well, good luck with that, and I wish you all the best with getting that up and running. So I think it's really important. We've tried to do it down here in Medway, and we have no more venues left. I think we've got one venue left now that does live music. But good luck with that, and I hope you're successful with it.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for appearing on the podcast.
And good luck.
No worries. Cheers. Thank you very much. Speak again soon. See you later.
Hopefully. Take care. Bye. Oh, wait.
Bye.
Sure. Stop recording.
Okay, awesome. I'll set it this bit.